This is the coolant from my Miata, and that's how it's supposed to look. In today's episode, we're doing a super flush on my Miata, and let me show you what that entails. In order to do a super flush, we're going to be doing it with distilled water. I have the coolant there as well. I have 4 gallons of distilled water, which should be just enough to drain all of the contaminants out of the Miata. So here we are. One of the last bits of maintenance that I want to knock off for the season is the coolant. As you can see there, it's pretty murky. First thing we're going to do is actually examine the other port. So this is where we are going to be opening. You want to make sure that the car isn't warm because this is pressurized, and if the car is warm, it's going to shoot out everywhere. Right here is the place for the drain for all of the coolant. So all I'm going to do is come under the car here and simply open this up. A little bit of green color does remain in the coolant here. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up radiator cap from up above. In the meantime, what I can do is I can open this up, set this to the side, and I can take this out. And now we can simply lift this out. So you can see inside here, it's all very, very brown, and that's the reason why I wanted to drain the coolant in the first place. Let's get all the water out of here, and you can see how brown that is. So now we have our hot water, and we're simply going to put very carefully our hot water into here, trying not to spill, and spilling all of it into the overflow container. Nice and hot, and just swirl it around. So I've gone ahead and done 3 to 4 more flushes, putting hot water in and removing the contaminants, and even brushing and taking a brush to the inside of it to get all like the gunk cleaned out. You can take a look here. The water is looking clear. And the next step is going to be to fill the system up. Now the reason I'm filling it up with distilled water is because I'll be able to see how dirty everything is, because the water is clear obviously. So after we keep flushing, and we're gonna do 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5 flushes until the Miata system is nearly clean. We don't have to keep flushing until it's 100% clear. We just have to go until it's almost clear, maybe a little less foggy or significantly less foggy. One extra thing that we're going to put in the first flush is going to be a cooling system cleaner. I'm gonna dump this, put maybe 2-3 hours on the system, and then drain it out, and then do the third flush. So I'm going to put a majority of this bottle into here, but not all of it. Put about 3/4. Now we add water. We have just under a gallon in there. There's a lot of coolant still in the heater core and the engine, which is what we're trying to flush out. So now that the radiator is pretty filled up, before we put the cap on and before we fill the overflow, we're gonna start the car and let it cycle through a little bit, and then see what we're looking like, get the car up to operating temperature, open up the heater core, and do all of those things before taking it out for a ride. The one thing we're watching is for the car to not be overheating. Now that the car has been running for a few minutes, we can see that there is a little bit of water that's gone into the motor. I have added significantly more water ever since I shut the camera off, just to make sure that we're maintaining that level. Make sure there is a little bit of distilled water, spilling it everywhere. Make sure you spill it while doing the job. The sun is setting, so that means we're going to have to continue this tomorrow, but that's not going to stop me from going and driving the Miata so that we're ready to go cycle out the coolant tomorrow. It seems like all the distilled water and extra water in the overflow there is all gone. Even though I thought I overfilled it, it's literally all gone into the motor. So that just means that I'm gonna have to make sure to top that off one time before I leave. During this drive, there's 2 things we have to do. Number 1 is make sure the car doesn't overheat and keep our eye on that temp gauge even more than we normally would. And the second thing is the water that's sitting in the heater core needs to be cycled, so we need to turn the heater core on to make sure that gets cleaned out as well. The car so far is getting up to operating temperature. It still isn't warm enough to see if it's overheating at all, but I'm gonna continue driving, put 10 miles on it or so, head back home. While the car is doing fine, if I turn this on here, it's not overheating. It's actually doing really good. And I've put, if the camera would focus, 11 miles. It's hard to breathe, but that's From the top, we can come and open this up to increase flow underneath there. As you can see, we put just distilled water in there, and it's coming out brown. So that definitely proves that we needed to do a flush.
Take my eyes open to this reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? I'm inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. Some days I feel skinnier than all the other days. Sometimes I can't tell if my body can. I love that feeling. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's meant to be. It's alright. Hush.
And just like that, flush number 4 is done, and damn, it looks so much more clear. I could keep going 3-4 more times, but I think it's not gonna get much better than what we have here. Examining it really quickly, this was the last flush, and this is this flush. And then just looking at them, there's quite a bit of difference just between these two. I'm not sure how well it's gonna show on camera, but I'm gonna put coolant back in the car, and let's compare all 4 of the flushes with each other and see how much more clear it came out. Just like that, our coolant flush is done. So let's take a look and compare and contrast all of the different coolants. Also, this cap has seen its better days. I have an OEM replacement on order. Taking a look at all of the different flushes, this is flush number 1, pretty much green coolant. It's supposed to be green coolant, but it's literally brown, as you guys saw in the beginning of the video. There's dust and dirt in this. It's sitting at the bottom of the gallon, unfortunately, right now, but there is dust, dirt, debris in the first flush. Second flush, it's still slightly green, still a little bit dirty. All the contaminants are still at the bottom of the gallon, unfortunately, but you can see that there is quite a bit of difference. And moving on to flush number 3, no contaminants, looking very clean. Even less green than this one is, and starting to become more pure water. And then coming over to the last flush, you can actually see through it. It is very pale, very light, and exactly what we were going for. This is new coolant, for those wondering. It's like a lime green. This would have been like a darker green, or green, not brown, and definitely should not have dirt and debris in it. Alright, so just like that, I put new coolant into the car, taking it out for a ride, everything's looking good, and I'm very happy that I can have clean coolant and a clean system. It's very important to keep up with maintenance on your car. If you did enjoy this video and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Make sure you go down and subscribe, click that join button if you want to become a channel member, and other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video.